Okay. It is my pleasure to introduce Crystal Hawkins. Thank you, Crystal, for taking the time to talk to me and to be able to talk to, in these classes, there's early childhood special educators, early childhood educators, and speech language pathologists that are all training at graduate levels. So thank you for taking the time. Do you want to start just by introducing yourself and kind of sharing what kind of experiences brought you to where you are today?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored. Crystal Hawkins. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I also have a pupil personnel services credential. What kind of brought initially when I remember being in grad school, the first time I was in grad school for criminal justice, the approach I took was like, oh, there's kids in the juvenile justice system. I'm going to go in and be a counselor.
Mhm.
And after a semester and a half in grad school, I was like, oh, that is not what criminal justice does. So I remember I withdrew. I was working in a residential treatment facility. And I remember one evening working with a resident, her mother called the dormitory and staff wouldn't let her use on the phone. And I was like, why wouldn't they let her talk to her mom? This resident, we both talked about how we loved our moms and all these things, and she tore the dormitory up. Like she was
Mhm.
upset, kind of broke some furniture. So I
Mhm.
went and read her chart. And when I read her chart, her mother was abusing her,
Mm.
prostituting her out for drugs and things like that. And I was like, huh, not even knowing it was in that moment that I fell in love with the social work concept of focusing on the person and their environment.
Mhm.
I think that following Monday, I went to my graduate program and withdrew, and then later went back to school for social work. So that's what brought me to social work. What brought me to San Francisco, a point, if I can ever give any pointers, you never know who you're talking to. So
Right.
always be on your A game, even in like chill settings. I was work at a work event with a friend and I was talking to this lady, did not know who she was. She was like, oh, send me your resume. And I was like, oh, sure.
Mhm.
It wasn't until, so sent a resume, applied for a job in the San Francisco Unified School District, interviewed and everything. I still never knew her position. She was just really nice, right?
Mhm.
First day, 6.5 years ago at SFUSD, they do the hierarchy.
Yeah.
It was Carla Bryant. She was the chief of the early education department. So
Wow.
that's how I got in the district. I
Uh-huh.
said I started 6.5 years ago. Maybe I started September. Maybe by December, I was going to quit the district. I was like, oh, this work's not for me. One, I was working within a system that was putting up barriers. I thought barriers for children and families, particularly as a Black woman. I said, I'd rather quit and move back home to LA and figure it out than come to work and do a disservice to
Mhm.
children that looked like me. And from there, that's when the chief at the time, she was like, hold on, Crystal, we're creating this program. We're going down to visit a program in Southern California called the Desert Mountain Children's Center. It's like an early intervention program. They're helping keep kids out of special education services and transitioning back to in-home placements without labels. I was like, all right, that sounds cool. For those that do not know,
Mhm.
San Francisco is about 4 to 6% African American students pre-K through 12th grade
Mhm.
in the whole school district. And they make up a heavy, I don't have the numbers on top of me, and I was just in a SACE meeting, but a large percentage of students referred to special education for ED, emotional disturbance designations. So as we began to do this work, at the time we didn't have a name for the Shoestrings Children's Center. It was more so we saw that children in 12th grade were being suspended and expelled. But when we looked in their brown folders, like, oh, you saw this in middle school. You
Yeah.
saw this in elementary school. Hold on, you saw this in our pre-K, which in pre-K, we don't suspend because we don't have a way to track it. It's not developmentally appropriate. We were asking students to take mental health days,
Mhm.
calling parents, can you come pick them up? What 3.5-year-old needs a mental health day from the dramatic play area?
Right.
It was more so we were asking children to change their behavior so adults felt comfortable. That
Mhm.
was an issue for me. So we pushed, I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, I just
Oh
agree.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely an issue. We're asking children to change their behavior so adults feel safe and comfortable. That doesn't make sense. The children have to be here. We choose to work here. So Shoestrings was designed specifically in response to the significant disproportionality that's not special to California, although San Francisco and the state of California ranks #1 for being significantly disproportionate. That's overrepresentation, as you guys know, in SPED for any
Mhm.
race or gender group for a specific designation in the district. It's emotional disturbances and other health impairments and suspensions. We've been sanctioned or deemed significantly disproportionate since 2012. I started in 2014.
Mhm.
We were just working all last semester with creating a comprehensive coordinated early intervention services plan, a SACE plan that we have to submit to the state to get out of SIGDIS.
Do you think, Crystal, you can, before I talk about like specifics, or I ask you specifics about shoestring, can you share like what in your experiences then in that first few months in San Francisco Unified and then forward, and not to just specify this district, but when you think about just in general, what do you see as being some of the major issues and concerns that are occurring that are leading to this disproportionality?
I think school districts do not see themselves as perpetuating institutional or systemic racism or barriers. I think they're like, no, we're a school. We all know that truly like is what our youngest learners, like preschool is not for all.
Mhm.
There's tuition based, and then there's subsidy families, and those there's a difference in just rules that apply to them, just with attendance. Um, I think the unions can be good. I think unions really reinforce uh, biased behavior, implicit and explicit of staff. The
Mhm.
unions are strong and protect, and a lot of times it's seen as we need bodies in these classrooms to teach these children. And it's like, don't you need people that care? All the
Mhm.
education and the professional development that can come. Let's have people that care and kindness.
Mhm.
I think that schools don't really want to look at themselves as being the problem,
Mhm.
and that's a problem. And often in schools, we either re traumatize children or children that may have never experienced any trauma get traumatized in the schools the
Mhm.
way things are set up. Particularly, like I know in early ed, our youngest learners, children may not have the vocabulary to know that they're being treated or experiencing some type of like bias or racism or things like that. But children know what it's like to be made to feel differently from
Right.
their peers. So, and I think a lot of times schools give you lip service. Schools give you lip, it sounds good.
Mhm.
Like, but what are we going to do? I tell people all the time, I can't come to your meeting and then halfway through the meeting, we're already setting a date for another meeting. I'm like, oh, that's because we're not leaving with action items. No, no, I'm a meet to move kind of person.
Yeah.
Um, Truth be told, I don't know if schools, school districts are really ready to do what you have to do. I think people are more concerned with the adults being okay than the children. And
Mhm.
everyone within a school district, whether it's the custodian to the bus drivers to the teachers to everyone, your job is designed to support children and families.
Yeah.
Um, I know that sounds simple, but I know it
Well,
can be
it seems
difficult for some.
foundational in what should be happening, right? So it feels like this kind of moves to how then shoestrings was conceptualized. So I really appreciate all of the resources that you gave and that we will share then with the students. But can you provide, just kind of share a little bit about how shoestrings has been conceptualized and what the real goals are of the program?
So again, we noticed that there was a spike in referrals to SPED
Mhm.
from like kindergarten. Really, the spike we saw was in second grade. So it's what's happening that when our children are getting into the elementary school, that there's a spike in referrals. Just like send them to special education, and note that in any time when I make reference to SPED. It's not anything against SPED. I think children that need access to special education services should have them. I don't think SPED should be used as a dumping ground just to like, I don't want to deal with the child. So we saw that what was happening. We were having difficulty sending kids from pre-K or graduating students from pre-K going to K as being seen as kindergarten ready.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't able, when they got in kindergarten, they weren't able to sit for circle time. Like, I don't want to sit for a 30-minute circle time. The kids weren't able to do all these things that were deemed ready. We were asking kids to go home. We were unofficially suspending. Particularly, it was the Black students, the Black boys, and then, the brown boys. So we went to model after this. We were like, what can we do to intervene early?
Mm-hmm.
One, intervening, not noting that we're not fixing the child
Mm-hmm.
through creating an environment where the teachers can learn. Environments can be set up because, as you know, working with children, the environment is also a teacher in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and kids can have a safe space to role play or learn through challenging times or get their needs met in a different way, including sensory needs. How can we conceptualize that within our early education setting?
Mm-hmm.
So we modeled our program after the Desert Mountain Children's Center
Mm-hmm.
in San Bernardino, California.
Mm-hmm.
And our program is designed over the course of 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Monday through Friday program. The children are able to be at any pre-K or TK. We've now expanded to kinder. In SFUSD, you have to be enrolled in SFUSD for all liability. We would love to expand beyond. And we use like Zoom, which is like baby lift, to bring the kids from their preschool or TK classrooms to our program. We're housed in the Bayview for 3 hours a day over the course of the 10 weeks, Monday through Friday. The kids are with us Monday through Wednesday from 9:30 to 12:30. They go back to their classroom so it's a intervention and assessment program. So that's happening simultaneously, hence the intensity of the program, that the children are able to generalize their learning immediately. Like, you don't have to wait, you immediately. And then on Thursday and Friday, my team members physically go to the children's site, one, to share our learning with the teachers. So it's that holistic approach. And then to observe and gather additional data. So when the child comes back, we can create opportunities for them to learn through any skills or strengthen any areas that need support. Being that we're not an educational placement within a school district that would make us special education services, we call ourselves more so diagnostic placement.
Mm-hmm.
What barriers can we remove in the environment to support the child with accessing their education or accessing instruction in a general education setting? Because if you're really trying to overcome significant disproportionality or do the work in special education, you should put your money in general education, making sure kids are getting what they need. My team is not filled up. No one's on a teacher, no one's in a teaching position or a teacher, knowing that kids will call us teacher because that's what they call adults in buildings.
Sure.
Um, Myself, I'm a clinical social worker. I have a social worker on my team, two nurses, um, occupational therapists, a behavior interventionist, and an early childhood mental health clinician. And again, through our transdisciplinary team, we're able to support the child holistically and look through a cross expertise kind of lens as to what could be some underlying needs of the child and how can we all create strategies to support them.
Yeah, that's such a cool part. I just think that your the wealth of expertise on your team are so are just so important. And I would probably argue that you are indeed teaching, even if you don't hold a teacher credential, that you are right there teaching and supporting those kids too. When I think about so when those kids are with you on the Monday to Wednesdays in the morning, what does it look like? So when you're really doing the diagnostic and then helping them learn these skills that they then bring back in the afternoon or the other days that they're trying out with their peers in general education, what does that time look like?
Well, our program is housed at a school. We're upstairs, we have our own wing, and we try to replicate our main classroom to really look like a general ed classroom. Even our play therapy room, the children come in, they have a visual schedule because we know that supports transitioning, easing anxiety, transitioning from preferred to non-preferred activities, knowing what happens next. We have circle time where we play music. Each room in our program has a calming corner where the child can say, I need a break. And they go set the timer, and there's sensory items, there's books, there's a mat they can lay down. We have designated like work areas where we use discrete trial training, the DTT modality from applied behavior analysis, where we just introduce concepts. It may, for us, our focus may not be for a child to learn all the letters in their name, which it's for like to master some concepts or just like some of the knowing the letters in their name. We're taking data for the teacher and the family on, they may need some brain breaks or they're having difficulty gripping a pencil. So
Mhm.
here are some fine motor activities. We take data that way, like what are the sensory needs or the social and emotional needs so the child can be successful in the classroom. The kids really, really love our sensory room. The kids call it like baby Chuck E. Cheese. We have swings and a ball pit and like play structures and all kind of bikes, and the kids weighted blankets, weighted vests. The kids just think they're playing, but our occupational therapist is administering assessments and taking data so we can support the family with the child being able to attend to whatever activities happening in the classroom and at home. We have play therapy where the children are all together and we're facilitating activities, modeling, and then like, pulling back to observe their interaction and coaching as needed, coaching to their specific social emotional needs. At this time, taking turns and sharing is really a big one. Engaging in play. A lot of times you'll see parallel play where kids are right next to each other and it's like, oh, can you share with your friend or how would you engage with your friend? One of the really cool components of our program is special playtime, which is modeled after PCIT, parent-child interaction therapy, or in our observation room, there's a one-way mirror where the caregiver and the child is observed with the wireless earpiece, and they're being coached from a headset from our clinicians, our team members on the other side of the one-way mirror. Um, Typically, we ask the family or the caregiver for some times that may be difficult in the home so we can recreate those in a safe space. A lot of times, transitioning from the iPad or to
Right.
dinner is
Mhm.
difficult. So we'll start out with the caregiver and the child, maybe like on the iPad, and then we're giving prompts and strategies through the earpiece to the caregiver on, all right, now we're going to give time and now we're going to transition, and then supporting them because again, the holistic approach is for the child to be successful at home and in the classroom.
So when I think about having senior environment and learning about it, and then I think about the challenge then of having to all of a sudden pivot to go remote. Can you share a little bit about how you have been able to do that and still try and have this cohort of kids and families that you're supporting?
Yes, so we went to shelter in place in March. We didn't have our first cohort to October, but my team, we met every day planning like, what can we do? So prior to shifting to our cohort, we shifted to adding a component to our program, which is we call B2L. It's Bridges to Learning. We were like, you know what? We're going to be out of school for we don't know how, well, physically in distance learning for we don't know how long. Let's give all these materials to the families so they can create learning spaces in the home. And that's exactly what we did. We got funding to purchase desks, um, all type. We make like sensory items, or we provide sensory materials, headphones, visual schedules. Each kit is individualized based on the need through consultation with the teacher and the family. What challenges are coming up for the child to access the distance learning, knowing that being on a device all day is not developmentally appropriate. But how can we create learning spaces in the home that can sustain past distance learning? Like
Mhm.
the child knows, like, this is my space. For the older kids, it's probably easy to differentiate, like, okay, I'm at home, but it's time to learn. For the younger kids, it's like, no, when I'm at school, I'm at school. When I'm at home, I'm at home. So we support families with creating those nurturing space, providing them all the materials that they need. And then also through consultation and use of our YouTube channel, building capacity because the parents are the experts. They know their child best,
Mhm.
where they can either like check in with us, hop in on a Zoom call with us if they have questions about materials or if new needs come up, or they can just refer to the YouTube channel to feel confident in their abilities to support their child at home because everyone went from parent to whatever type of role. So on top of that, now you're the teacher and you're the principal and you're the instructional coach and the counselor. So really wanting to, parent partnership was magnified 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one component. And we are providing a virtual cohort. It's 5 weeks instead of 10 weeks. And instead of 3 hours a day, because the kids are already on, it's an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
And we get up and do movement. We do sensory activities. We have our feelings check in. We're doing different kind of activities. We're having one-on-one consultations with families, family workshops. And just as we would do if we were in-person learning, we end with a graduation ceremony.
I think that's so cool. So I feel like maybe one of my final questions is just how, when you then think about the cohorts that have gone through now, Shoestrings, what are you able to kind of track how these kids are doing, or what are you seeing as being really successful in terms of like long term with this program, and what kind of things has it brought up to be like, hey, we need more of this, or there needs to be some more things that are taking place to continue to support these kids and families?
So what we noticed that particularly Black boys were being referred. Right after Black boys, it was brown boys and then Black girls. Um, and they were like some of the highest achievers in their classroom, right? Smart kids. They do what kids do. They got bored. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yep.
was something we were able to communicate. Like, it's not a refer to special education because they have a learning disability. It's like, how are you as a teacher differentiating instruction? If
Right.
I know if I know Amber is going to finish early, is Amber assigned a helper to help her peers?
Mm-hmm.
Does she have another task, or can I give her something else to do?
Right.
So that consultation piece with teachers, also sharing with families strategies that work with their child that does not come with a diagnosis, does not come with a IEP or anything like that, where families felt confident and able to advocate for their children, knowing specifically what they need. Often in our district, I'm not a parent, I don't have children. However, I know we love to call parents when their child's behavior is an issue for us. And I'm
Right.
sure as a parent, that can feel like, whoo, you're blaming me. Um, so that way, just looking like, oh, there's an alternative. And a lot of time parents feel like when their referral is made to SPED, like, okay, that's the only option I have so my child can stay in school. Well, now parents are like, hey, my child just need to take a break, or, oh, I'll just bring my child's weighted vest, or give them a spiky pickle where they can be in their hand or doing some movement, or can you incorporate more movement so they can be successful in their general ed classroom?
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to say that we finished our 7th cohort in December. Our 8th cohort starts February 8th. And of the nearly 30 children we've served, not one of our children have been referred to special education for emotional disturbances.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what has happened is at the end of our cohort, we wrote up a detailed plan, and one of our students was referred for speech and language.
Mm-hmm.
Smart kid. What happened when his peers had difficulty understanding what he was saying, he would get frustrated then. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that he wasn't able to engage, it was just sometimes when the words were harder to understand, he would get upset.
For sure.
So was able to write that and get the services he needed. Often, when children sometimes are referred to SPED, it's just like, why are they having access to the general ed services? Now everything has to go through an IEP meeting. It's like, if I just need speech, I should still have access to all the general ed services and supports. Call me
Mhm.
crazy.
I feel like you're speaking to the choir here. So good. Is there anything else, Crystal, that you would want to mention or that you think is important to share?
I think working all my years as a mental health clinician, I've never worked specifically in the school until I got to the district. And what I see even more is just, if I could say, please really, really learn to separate the child from the behavior. Know that the behavior is a symptom of something else. If you can do that, you can do the work.
Those are great words. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for taking the time to share.
Thank you for having me.